welcome to In the Zone. I am Craig Zimmerman, the guy with the name on the screen, and we're joined here today by a guy that needs no introduction to the St. Clair area. Welcome, Todd Bigger. Thank you.
Hi, Craig.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Bigger, you and I go way back to when the kids were in school. We won't talk about how many years, but quite a few years. And you're a native of St. Clair, so tell us, were you born in the old St. Clair?
I was born south of town in East China.
Okay.
And we spent all of our childhood in St. Clair. Went to East China Elementary the first year it opened in 1954. I was a kindergartner.
So that was the school where the administration building is now?
Right, where the football field is.
Okay.
And attended there until 6th grade. Then we transferred into middle school, junior high, into St. Clair and St. Clair High School.
Okay. So you went, which grade school then in elementary did you go to?
East China.
Okay, East China all the way through then?
Yeah,
okay.
K6.
Okay.
Right.
And then from 7th grade on?
St. Clair High School.
Okay.
Or St. Clair Junior High, St. Clair High School.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were out where the current school is?
Junior high, we were at the old high school on 6th Street.
Okay.
And the year we went in as 7th graders, they transferred the seniors to the new high school along with the 9th through 12th grade. And we were left at the middle school, 7th and 8th.
Okay. And if you go to the high school today, you'd probably hardly recognize it with all the construction and the changes going on there.
Yeah, you barely recognize the outside, nonetheless the inside.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
I'd be lost.
Back then there was probably one wing, maybe two, and now there's about 5 or 6, and there's separate gyms and Alex gyms and all that other stuff.
Yeah, we graduated 127
Okay.
in 1967.
Okay.
So they've really grown.
Yes, yes. So after high school, where did you go to college?
I went to SC4.
Okay.
That was my start. I dropped out for a little period of time to enlist in the Air Force.
Okay.
And I ended up going through basics, but I had high blood pressure, and they wouldn't let me go on. It was during the Vietnam conflict. And yeah, so I had enlisted, and I decided at that point that it was time to come back and go back to school.
So that's sort of a one time in your life where high blood pressure was maybe a positive thing in your life.
Well, I was disappointed. I was going in for 4 years.
Okay.
That was my intent. And I was hoping to get some travel and wherever, you know,
Sure.
I didn't know. My brother was just getting out of Vietnam. He was a Marine, and I was ready to do my share.
Okay.
But it ended short, and when I got home, I had decisions to make.
Yeah, you're grown up, and here you go. Got to do something.
Yeah, I had to decide.
So your parents, were they born and raised in town?
My mother was born in St. Clair. In fact, we go all the way back to 1852 when my great-grandmother came to St. Clair as a 2-year-old.
Okay.
And she was raised in St. Clair. My dad was not a St. Clair boy. He originally came from Marshall, indirectly from Croswell. A lot of the families were up in the Croswell area. And he ended up in Marshall, and then he came to live in Richmond after his mother had passed away. And at that time, he met my mom, and they were married and raised their family in St. Clair.
Now, was your mother's maiden name a local name that we would recognize?
Yeah, it was a Delor.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, D-E-L-O-R.
Okay.
Yep.
So you've probably got relatives still with Delors in St. Clair and even Marysville, maybe?
St. Clair and, yeah, pretty much St. Clair. And Brinker was another name.
Okay.
My grandmother was a Brinker.
Okay. Where did your father work?
My father was a truck driver.
Okay.
And he was working different jobs all the time, you know, growing up.
Sure.
He was on the road quite a bit, so he was gone 2 weeks at a time and home on the weekends usually, every other weekend.
Sure.
But it was a good situation for kids who had a lot of freedom.
Well,
you know,
exactly.
And we did. We had, you know, a lot of, it was a community you could
you could come and go as, when you, especially when school got out, when you woke up in the morning, you pretty much left the house and didn't come back till dinner time or whenever you wanted to eat, right?
Yeah, oh, sure. And, you know, I compare it to fish. You know, the fishermen begin to fish certain fish depending on the season. And May would come along, and as soon as it warmed up enough, we'd start swimming in Pine River. And after it got a little bit warmer, we'd move over to Big River, and we spent a lot of our time going into town, which is a 3-4 mile hike. And we would spend most of the time at the park swimming. Yep. So it was good. We had a good childhood.
Well, sure. And I'm sure you still see some of those folks from time to time in town.
Oh, absolutely. We grew up in a part of town that was called Jungle Town.
Okay.
And it was one that people smile at, and they always wonder where the name came from.
Right.
We don't know. I tried to research it when I was a member of the museum. to find out a little bit more about why it was called Jungletown. And
Haven't
I
quite
thi-
tracked it down?
no, I think it's kind of a mystery forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So growing up in that time, swimming was just a natural thing, probably all day, every day in the
Oh yeah,
summertime.
you had to swim.
Yeah.
You know, we just swam. That was all there was to it. There's no question. And the water was always, Big River was
Yep.
always over our head. So you
Yeah.
had to be a swimmer. And at that time we had a ferry boat, you know, in town, connected over to Courtright. And we'd always dive in the water after the
Okay.
ferry boat would leave and
Sure.
churn it up a little bit. And the freighters would come by and we'd always dive and swim through the waves. And
Okay.
the old, they had torn down the town and they threw some of the pavement into the river at that time where the park area was. And there's actually little tunnels that you could swim through.
Okay.
It was a
So
good
now,
time.
where was the ferry docking at approximately with the park? Do you know? Can you tell, or you remember?
I would think it would be probably close to this mall area central part,
Okay.
kind of in that area.
Okay.
Um,
And did it go to the spot where where the stone piles are, over in Courtright?
Actually, they pulled up closer to town.
Okay.
Yeah, you're pretty much got off in town.
Okay.
When we were kids, we used to be able to go over there and buy firecrackers when
Yeah.
they were illegal
Yep.
here. And we had the fun times. And people our age always told the stories, that they'd go over and put the firecrackers in their bicycle handlebars or thinking they were hiding them. But we got smart. We just paid for them over there and blew them off over there and then came home.
Then came home.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, thinking back of how the dollar is different today, with inflation. Back then, if you had a couple dollars in your pocket, you could buy a lot of things.
Yeah, and the ferry ride was a quarter.
Yeah.
It was easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So back then, it was normal to go to and from Canada on a, not maybe a daily basis, but weekly basis.
Oh, sure. You didn't
Yeah.
need the passport. You didn't
Yep.
need any type of identification. You could just go over, and you'd always go over as kids. Go over as a
Yeah.
small group and spend some time, then catch the boat back home.
So I would assume that in your mind, you still have somewhat of a memory of what stores were where,
Oh, big memory.
right?
Big memory. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm a collector of photographs and
Sure.
of the old town, but my memory of the old town is very fresh. And what made up the old town? And
Right.
it wasn't just the buildings. It was also the families that owned it.
The
we
people,
were all,
right.
Yeah, we were connected. We
Yeah.
knew the families. Our parents knew the families. My grandparents knew the families.
Yep.
And that was a great support. Even as a kid, we had Finsterwalds from Marine City. Had a men's store. And I had a paper out for 4 years that I was always setting money aside. I could go into Finsterwalds and charge,
Sure.
and then make payments on a sweater or a jacket, whatever I was saving for. And after I paid it off, it was mine.
It was yours.
But you could do that as a kid. And you knew the Finsterwalds. You knew the families. They knew you.
So you remember dealing with Carl and
Harvey.
Harvey, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
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 Same thing in Marine City growing up and going in there. I remember getting my varsity jacket and
Yeah.
getting the letters and, the different things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And stuff like that's lost nowadays. It's like
Yeah.
everybody online and they buy it online.
Yeah.
You went down there and like you say, you put the money down and you didn't take it home till you paid for it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and there's just a lot of connections. And my brother-in-law's mother worked at the one store where you could go and get the light bulbs, and you knew them, and you knew all the different families.
Yeah.
You just connected.
The one thing I can forever remember is not how to, but watching it being done. When Finsterwalds used to wrap a present, if you were getting a present, they used to make a bow.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, and then they would take a scissors, pull it down, and it would
Curl it up.
curl it up,
Yeah.
And I, as a kid, that was you sat there and you watched it.
Oh, yeah, it was
Yeah.
special.
It was like magic almost.
Yeah, it didn't happen at home.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
So my recollection is, I remember Dr. Beer was our family doctor, and Dr. Beer was close to the riverside, I remember. I don't know if you remember Dr. Beer's
Oh,
office
sure.
and all.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
And Dr. Clifford, he was right in town. He was right next door to Gleam's Meat Market.
Yep.
What I remember, not only was the building itself, the smell, it was always
Right.
a very clean,
Yes.
almost too clean. you know, when you got in there, you knew you were going to be in trouble.
Right.
You know, there was something that was
Yeah.
going to happen that you didn't want.
Or going in these old buildings and the floors creaked
Oh, yeah.
as you walked in.
Yeah,
You know.
we always talk about Toyland, which was another store, and they had an elevator. And even though it was for, you know, raising packages and stuff
Sure.
up rather than for people, it was intriguing to us
Get in
because
there.
we had to go to Sperry's to ride an elevator.
Right.
And that was a big experience.
Yep.
You know, it just didn't happen.
That's, as soon as you say that, I think I remember going to Sperry's, and it was a big deal to watch the operator turn that thing and push it into the correct floor, right?
Right, yeah.
And as a kid, you're looking at that like, how does he do that?
Oh, yeah. And you go next door to Diane's
Yeah,
candy shop or food shop,
Yeah.
whatever. It was always
Yeah.
a good experience.
very special.
We would always go to Marine City to get our shoes
Okay.
as kids. And
Kirsten's?
Gerks? No,
Gerk-
not Gerks. Gerks is
was
Richmond.
Kirsten's Marine City, I
okay.
believe, and there might have been another one or
Yeah,
two.
yeah, we always used to go there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
my dad was a milkman in Marine City,
Okay.
you know, as a young man. Yeah, and he knew a lot of the customers there. So when I ended up working in Marine City at the school, I met a lot of the grandmas that
Okay.
knew my dad.
Sure.
That was fun.
Yeah,
I just-
always good. So you went away to, after SC4, you went to a 4-year school?
I went to Central
Okay.
Michigan, and graduated from Central, got my first job in the Thumb area, continued my education through Central, you know, worked on my master's degree, finished that. I got a counseling degree through Central after the master's degree, and then I picked up a specialist degree at Central. So all my work has been at Central. It was the closest setup in the Thumb area. It was
Okay.
only
Sure.
2-hour drive,
Yep.
so that worked.
So then you graduate from Central, and your first job out of college is where?
Up in the Thumb area.
Okay.
Up in the Caseville area, not a Caseville, but
Okay.
a district that's surrounded, comprised of three towns.
Okay.
And I worked there for a couple decades plus. And then I decided it was time, after I finished my specialist degree, to interview and make some move. And my goal was always to come back home, you know, to come back to East China. I wasn't sure that would be able
Ever
to
happen?
happen. Yeah, so I put out 3 applications, and I was lucky. I heard from all 3 places. But the first place I interviewed was East China. And I was in between taking a group of kids for a week camping, and then after that I'd come back and take another group of 3 buses to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And it was a real pressuring time, and I worked in the interview and was ready to go do the other interviews, and East China called and invited me to work for them.
What year did
So-
you start in East China, would you think?
94,
Okay.
yeah.
And so do you remember the administrators that you interviewed with?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, Tom.
Tom Shorkey?
Oh, yeah, Tom,
Okay.
yep. And he was the main one. It was, I knew the Shorkeys, I knew Dave.
Yep.
His brother, you know,
Yeah.
same grade. But he went to Holy Cross, and I knew several of the Holy Cross kids.
Right.
But I, you know, knew of Tom, and it was a
Good
nice
on you.
setup. Yeah,
Okay.
it worked out really well.
Real good, okay. So then you landed, now did you land immediately at Washington School?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And as an administrator?
As an administrator.
Okay. So
Yep.
you were the principal at Washington School for how long?
10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
10.
you got to see a lot of kids come through there in 10 years.
Oh yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, not only did I enjoy the kids at the school, I mean, they were the main reason. They were what was the best about the whole
Yep.
situation. But there's so many good parents, so many involved parents.
Yep.
And I had a staff that I really enjoyed. Just a lot of good people. So
Yeah.
it was a great move. It was a nice transition, nice chance to come home.
Yep.
And I came home at a time where I was able to do a lot of things for family, especially
Yeah.
my mother, who lived on her own and
Sure.
was having some health issues, and it made it all workable.
Yeah,
I
it's very-
could do that.
Very comfortable to work in an environment where you know a lot of people and it's small townish
Yeah.
and people working towards the same goals.
Oh yeah, and I had family here.
Yeah.
You know, my family, my brother was here, and 2 of my sisters, and the third one was here for a while too.
Okay.
But 2 of my sisters still live in the area. My brother's wife still lives in the area. He passed away.
Okay.
And my other sister lives in Florida.
Okay. You see them fairly often?
Yeah, quite often.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, my sister in Florida is coming home for the St. Clair hometown reunion,
Okay.
along with my niece, who's coming from Denver with her husband. My nephew is coming from Tulsa, possibly with his wife. They're still working on that
Okay.
part. And another nephew from Florida will be coming in, and possibly a great nephew coming from Seattle.
Okay,
So-
let's talk about the hometown reunion, because I think that's a great idea, and it's obviously been going on for a number of years. How did it get started?
Well, it actually started because I was working on and chairing our class reunion. I graduated in '67. And the reunion committee and the people that would attend wanted to do something more frequently because class members were moving and passing, and things were happening fast, and they wanted to keep that connection to home.
Sure.
So I said that's a great idea, but the only way we will do this is if it can be something for the community, because it's bigger than just our class.
Yes.
So that was actually last year was the first year.
Okay.
And we made it a weekend, Friday, Saturday. This year, it's more. It starts on Wednesday, and we're doing an open house at the American Legion on Wednesday evening, and everyone's invited. We have a Jobel Burger, which
What's
is
the date?
the 23rd of August.
Okay.
We're doing a Jobel Burger, which was part of our A&W. We used to have an
Okay.
A&W south of town, and the Jobel Burger was something that everybody really loved.
So they remember it, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, we tried to duplicate it last year. It didn't work out quite well, but this year we've worked with Joe Papshak, the owner's daughter,
Okay.
and a couple other employees that worked at the A&W. And we have a person at the Legion who does a great job cooking, and he and his team have taken up the challenge to produce a very similar Jobel Burger,
Okay.
along with the Joe, he did a onion ring. And we're going to have the onion ring plus a couple other foods from other restaurants from the 60s at the Legion on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday
Okay.
to bring everybody in. But Wednesday night's a real kickoff. It's fun. We're inviting everybody in the community to come and just get together and enjoy the whole weekend.
Sure, sure. So is it going to be in the park downtown?
No, it's all over the place actually. This year I tried to integrate different activities, events, tournaments.
Sure.
So on Wednesday we're doing a Mahjong tournament, which has really taken off.
Okay.
I mean, it's filling in very quickly. And we're doing that at the Legion. I'm a Legion member, so
Sure.
they're working with me and they're very accessible and supportive. And on Thursday we're doing, in the evening we have cornhole, but in the morning we have a euchre tournament.
So for some people that don't know where the Legion Hall, it's at the railroad tracks and
It's Clinton Avenue,
Clinton Avenue,
just
yeah.
over the railroad tracks, about 300 feet
Yep.
on the north side.
North side. Yep.
We have a euchre tournament, and this is again public. It's not just St. Clair. So
Okay.
yeah, I want to let that be known. If anybody enjoys euchre and would like
Come
to
on
come,
down.
yeah, oh yeah, we have people from Marine City signing up. We have Mahjong. We have people from Marine City, Port Huron. I got some this morning from Lexington.
Okay.
So just all over the place.
Yeah.
And cornhole is going to be available. There's a lot of people that enjoy cornhole. We're going to set it up behind the American Legion
Okay.
on Thursday evening. On Friday, we're doing a 3-par golf setup at Pine Shores.
Okay.
And all the 4s and 5s have been converted to 3s
Okay.
using a GPS system. And instead of one winner takes all, it's actually each hole is its own winner.
Okay.
Or, winner,
Sure.
depending. So if
Yeah.
we get 40 people, each hole would be a $40 prize.
Okay.
We're going to be just having a lot of fun. Then afterwards, we're going up to the American Legion for awards and a little bit of celebration.
Okay.
And after the golf outing from 4 to 7, the class of '68, which was a year behind me, they're having an open house at the Voyager in the
Okay.
sports bar. But again, we're not limiting it to
Sure. Anybody can come.
that class. Anybody can come, and
Yeah.
anybody who knows anybody in that class
Right.
is invited to come for the 3 hours and just have a fun time
Sure.
at the sports bar. And then we're going to move up to the mall. On Friday night we have a band,
Okay.
and the band is a good band. That's an all-genre band.
Okay.
And on Saturday night it's a country band. And that's at the mall again also. So it's going to be a lot of
That's
fun.
fun.
Saturday there's a horseshoe tournament out at Adler Bar that Kurt, the owner, has been helpful in working with setting this up and supporting it. Proceeds from that will go to the Clutch a Ball field.
Okay.
They're working on a water park and updating the ball field and doing a pavilion. So we'd like to be very supportive of that.
Sure.
A lot of the events that are going on at the Legion support the Legion, the veterans, and the community. They do a lot of community events. So all these events are not just getting people together, but they're supportive to the community.
Yep.
So that's good.
So that's almost like a full-time job for you in retirement.
It's just been fun.
Yeah.
I've gone around to all the golf courses asking for donations, and it's just unbelievable the support outside of the community that they're willing to work with us. And in the community, the businesses who are, they've had a busy season, which is great. But the goal is to get people who are coming back to St. Clair to see all the new businesses that have come since COVID and to support the businesses that were here before COVID.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm hooked.
Yeah.
I'm hooked on
you're
part of it. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I thought about asking you, I'm sure somebody's given you a few of those burgers to taste test and make sure they're specifically like they were in 1965 or so, right?
We got that coming up very shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting together on one of these coming Saturdays to actually make sure we got it.
Make sure you got it down.
Yeah. And the same with the onion rings. It's a process.
Yeah.
And it was something that he did his own special way.
Sure.
And people, that's one thing, if you'd ask people, what do you remember about the A&W? And they would say the Joe Bowl and the onion rings. So we want to make sure that fits the memory.
Now, when will they be serving those? Just one night or?
No, we're Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Okay.
It'll be open from noon on for people to stop in.
At the Legion Hall.
Yeah, and even we'll have some of the events going on, but it's large enough that we'll be serving in the other section of the Legion.
Okay.
So we'll have events going on, tournaments, but we also will have that. Oh, one I forgot to mention too. This is really special. Having been a member of the Legion or the museum, we have a bus tour set up with preferred charters.
Okay.
And we're bringing a nice air-conditioned bus in to do an hour and 15-minute tour 3 times on Saturday, the 26th. And it's in the morning, starts at 8:45 will be the first one, 10:45 will be the second, and 1:45 will be the third trip. It costs each person $6 to do this trip on the preferred charter bus. It's really great.
Is it a home tour or a tour of just a lot of just the nostalgic things that have happened, like the Salt Company or?
Yeah, it's a historic tour.
Okay.
It's not only telling the history of what it was, but taking you to the location where it was. For instance, we had 2 shipbuilding areas in St. Clair that were really big. One was actually Pine River, and the other one was south of town.
Okay.
And it was a big operation that eventually moved out of the area and moved down into the Wyandotte area.
Okay.
So it's going to take people there and show them and tell them how this history is connected. I mean, there's so much more.
Right.
And even as a member of the museum and my background in St. Clair, there's always new stuff coming up. So I know that families who have kids in school would enjoy this trip with their kids. I know that families, seniors coming back, it'll draw a lot of their memories. It'll be a great
that's like any small town like a St. Clair has so many things that sort of get overlooked on a daily basis. But like, especially lately, like I've noticed, like the Salt Company's got a huge addition going on. Now, I don't know how long the Salt Company's been around, but I'm going to guess 120 years or something like that. A long time, right?
Yep.
So you look back, that's been part of so many people's lives. You probably have parents, grandparents, cousins that all worked there.
Right,
for
correct.
2 and 3 and 4 generations.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
In that salt vein, which starts up in Canada, north of Sarnia.
Goderich, I'm guessing.
Yep, and all the way down to Detroit. We're a part of that salt vein. And in earlier years, we had 2 that were side by side, one being the Diamond, the other being Thompson's.
Right.
And they were side by side. It continued on to Marine City. In Marysville, I had Morton.
Yep.
It's just such a strong history that we're all connected to.
The other thing I mentioned to somebody, in fact, last night I was speaking to a gentleman that works over at the salt plant, and my comment was, this addition they're putting on is such a huge thing for the community, because when it's owned by a big company like Cargill, I'm not saying them specifically, but a lot of times the fact of taking and adding on to a facility like that becomes an issue of sometimes of nothing to do with the town itself, but you know, they may have a facility somewhere else that is newer. They may have somewhere that's more centrally located to their distribution. But evidently St. Clair, I was told that because it's a specific type of salt, they find that they can't refine that anywhere else in the country. So that lends itself to St. Clair and to expand it. And expanding it means that a lot of those jobs are going to be here for another generation or two.
Maintains it, you betcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's very impressive. And the more work I've done, talking to the different businesses and going to a chamber meeting and different things like that, and I notice the businesses' support of the community is so important.
Yes.
And I see that with Cargill.
Yep.
And what they do and the options they put out there to the public. And I see that with Magna coming in. You know, that they just offer so much, not only the employment, which is primary,
huge, right?
You know, that's really important, but what they offer to kids in school, the opportunity to stay in the area.
You don't have to move 60 miles away.
And you can do robotics. You can, you know, it's just so much going on at a good time in a small area.
Yes.
And that's why I like, you know, the Marine City, Algonac, St. Clair setup, because we're off the beaten track enough that you got to go out of your way to get here. But it helps maintain the smallness that's important to us.
Right. Well, you know as well as I do, you go into some of these restaurants, whether it be Murphy's or whether it be, you know, Mike's place down there at the bowling alley, and you know a lot of people, but you go in there sometimes and you go do one of these and you go, I don't know anybody here.
Yeah.
And that's a positive thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are coming from the other areas.
Yep. Yeah, I was down talking to one of my former teachers in the mall. We ran into each other and we were talking about Marine City and Washington and you know, the good times that we had in Marine City.
Yeah.
And a guy came walking through with his dog, and it was a nice dog. And I just, you know, you have a nice dog. And he said, well, we really like St. Clair. He said, I'm not from here. He said, my mother and father moved here not too long ago. And he said, it's really, really like a Rochester.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's nice. And he walked away, and I'm thinking, it is like Rochester, but we have our own identity.
Right.
And Marine City would be the same way. You know, that we don't need to be a Rochester. We have our own draw.
Oh, yeah.
But it's nice to know that people are coming here because they like it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I always say, too, it's like you go to a restaurant that's near the water, and you or I could sit there and talk, and a 1,000-foot freighter goes by, and you and I, because we've seen them all kinds of times, you might not pay much attention, but you can tell the people that are not from town in about 2 seconds, right? Because they get their cell phones out and they start taking pictures.
Oh, yeah.
I remember going to the River Crab on a company visit that we had, an incentive trip that we wanted to go to dinner, and so we chose that. And some of the people from Metro Detroit came, and they couldn't believe this freighter. How big is that? Mm-hmm. And then they're like, how often does that come by?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, you'll see one a day, two a day.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know? I mean, at least.
And then you got the beautiful blue water.
Yeah.
You know, the reflection of the sky and all the boaters and the fishermen. And it's just a calm quality of life that we all search for. You know, that I was glad to come back home.
Oh,
That was a big opportunity for me to be back in St. Clair.
Yep.
I always had that yearning, so it worked out sooner than I'd ever thought it could. I was grateful for that.
Now, if anybody wanted to help, say, with next year's event, where do you get together?
That's a good question.
At the Legion?
Yeah, it probably would be. You know, they're just very supportive. But next year, as I look at new opportunities to add, you know, I'd like to do biking. I'd like to do something with running. I'd like to do, you know, activities that bring people home.
Sure.
I remember years ago I was backpacking through Scotland, and I was up in the Highlands, and I remember a community. It was just small, and they were having their festival, and they had an area where biking was going on. They had the caber tossing, they had the bagpipers, they had a community together, and it was all ages. It wasn't just one group.
So it's sort of that line, something for everybody.
Yeah, and it was, that time it was always stuck in my mind, and that's kind of what I'm hoping eventually to do. You know, whether it's a tennis tournament, I tried to do a pickleball tournament this year, and it just didn't work out because of the pickleball court, and the person who was going to help me ended up needing shoulder surgery. Sure. And but he said, you know, the area isn't really set up for pickleball. You know, the outside courts, it's set up for tennis. Sure. So, you know, down the road, I mean, there's just
I know East China has some that are set up for pickleball.
Yeah, see, that would be
So,
great.
you know,
That'd be nice.
So we'll put a call out to anybody that's got a great idea. See
Yeah.
Todd Bigger.
Yeah, you know, a tournament of any
Yeah.
type. You know, please talk to me.
Yep.
You know, suggest it to me. But anybody that could help do
Sure.
that would be greatly appreciated too, because I just think it's something that could really expand. And
Yeah. So
I was hoping to do a family program a day on Sunday for families.
sure.
And I had to back off that. I was biting off way more than I could chew.
Sure.
And I overstepped my boundaries in a couple areas, and I realized that, and I needed to back off.
But there'll be a date for that, right? I mean,
It'll come, yeah, because I think it's important to do things. My life has been family and kids.
Sure.
So I'm thinking that needs to be a big part of one of the days.
Yeah, and we'll put a message out to like people maybe in cross country or a tennis coach, or
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
because they can run that stuff because they know how to do it.
Oh, absolutely. Or anyone who, you know, the PE type person who runs camps,
Sure.
field days.
Yep.
You know, that would also be a big part of what's coming.
Okay.
And Clutcha Park now with their new setup, you know, doing the water
Oh, yeah,
park and having the baseball field, there's just so much opportunity.
Yes.
That would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Okay. Gosh, I think we covered just about all of it. So we'll look for August 23rd. That's the Wednesday, the whole weekend.
Through Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, it was going to be Sunday, but I had to cancel
Okay.
Sunday. So anybody who got a flyer, I apologize
Okay.
for the change.
Next year, who knows? Maybe all the way through Sunday.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for being my 66th guest, and we'll see you down the road.
66. Wow. Thanks a lot,
you.
Craig.
Phone number's there if you can recommend anybody like Mr. Bigger here, 586-707-5811, and we'll put In the Zone number 66 in the books and see you next time. Thank you.